Hello, my name is Dr. Yasi Soko, Professor of Economics, Department of Finance and Economy, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 2, Labor Supply. So this video is about measuring labor supply. First of all, let's begin with some labor facts in the US. For men, labor force participation rate declined from 80% in 1900 to 71% in 2010. For women, on the other hand, labor participation rate rose from 21% in 1900 to 60% in 2010. The hours worked fell from 40 to 34 per week during the same time period. So how do you measure the labor force? In the US, the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, send out a survey called Current Population Survey (CPS) to a US household. So the the that survey measured the labor force, where labor force, also called workforce, equal to employed people who have a job plus unemployed people who do not have a job but are actively looking for one. So LF, labor force, equal to E, employed, plus U, unemployed. Now, the size of labor force does not tell us about the intensity of work. Let's give one example of labor force. In 2021, 2021, so the labor force in the US LF was equal to employed, which was equal to 151.4 million people were employed, plus unemployed people, 9.4 million people were unemployed, which is equal to 160.8 million people. So, therefore, the labor force in 2021 was 160.8 million people. So, how do you measure the labor force participation rate? Labor force participation rate equal to LFPR equal to labor force divided by population divided by P, where P equal to the civilian population, 16 years or older, not in institution. So people in institution, or also known as institutional people, are, so people in the hospital, when they are sick, people in the prison, people also in the military. Those people are called, institutional people. They are excluded from the civilian adult population. In 2020, in 2021, the P was equal to 261 million people. So therefore, the labor for LFPR, the labor for participation rate in 2021 was equal to the labor force, which is 160.8 million people, divided by, this P, the civilian adult population, so 261 million people times 100 to convert the result into percent. So this is equal to 61.6%. 61.6%. What is the meaning of 61.6%? It means that in 2021, 61.6% of the labor of the population, civilian adult population, were either working or looking for a job. So you can see that the remaining, 39.4% were not in the labor force. From the CPS or the current population survey, we can also compute the employment ratio, which is known as the employment population ratio. So EPR equal to employment divided by P, the civilian adult population. So for instance, in 2021, so the EPR was the employed people, which is 151.151.4 million divided by P, so which was 261 million people times 100 to convert the result into percent. So this was equal to 58, 58.0%. So, in other words, in 2021, only 58% of the population, the civilian adult population, were active in the U.S. were producing, in the U.S. Were adding to U.S. GDP. So you can see that labor for participation rate was 61.6%, but now this to so which is all which measure the percentage of the population, civilian population, either active or either working or looking for a job. But now this rate dropped to 58% because only 58% of the U.S. population, adult population, was active or working, to adding to U.S. GDP. Also, we can also compute the unemployment rate, so which is UR equal to number of people who are unemployed divided by labor force. So in 2021, the unemployment rate was equal to a number of people who are unemployed, 9.4 million divided by, so labor force, which is 160.8 million times 100 to have the result, to convert the result into percentage. So then this was equal to, 5.8%. Therefore, the unemployment rate in 2021 in the US was 5.8%, meaning that 5.8% of the labor force were unemployed, in 2021. So labor force measurement relies on subjectivity and likely underestimate the effect of a recession. For instance, we have hidden unemployed, so which are people who have given up the search for work and have therefore left the labor force. So if you stop looking for a job, then you will not be considered as unemployed and you'll be excluded from the labor force. So by these hidden unemployed people are also known as discouraged workers. So they are excluded from the labor force. By excluding them from the labor force, the unemployment rate will decrease, and which will not be a true measure of the economic fluctuation. So therefore, the employment rate E divided by P, employment divided by civilian population, adult population, can be a better measure of the fluctuation in economic activity than the unemployment rate. So, what are some labor force participation facts in the USA? So, labor force participation (LFP) is greater for all group during the age of 25 to 55. Labor for participation rate also increases with education. The higher your education level, the higher will be the participation in the labor force. Labor force participation also has decreases for men over the age of 65 from 63% in 1900 to under 22% in 2010. So let's look at the US labor force participation rate from 1948 all the way up to 2020. So the labor force participation rate for men was 88% in 1948. This rate decreases all the way up to 68% in 2020. On the other hand, the labor force participation rate for women was 33% in 1940, in 1948. In 1948, this rate increases all the way up to all the way up to 60% in 2000, and then after 2000, which was the period of the end of the period of so the the technological innovation in the US, the rate say flat to about 60%. Overall, the labor force participation rate for men and women, so was about so 60% 60% in 1945. This also increases all the way up to so all the way up to 68% in 2000, and after that the rate kind of stabilize and say almost with a slight decrease to so 67% in 2020, in 2020. Let's compare the US labor force participation rate to the US, so employment ratio. So we can see that during, so from the period of 2020, January 2020 to, so August 2021, we can see that during the pandemic in March, so both of the rate dropped. So this rate dropped to 60%. The level for participation rate dropped to 60%, and then the employment ratio dropped to 50%, so, and then both of them increased and stabilized. The level for participation rate stabilized at 60%, and then the employment ratio stabilized at 58%. But overall, labor force participation rate is higher than the employment ratio, which is a better measure of the economic activity than the labor force participation rate, because labor force participation rate exclude, discouraged worker from the labor force. Labor force participation facts in the U.S. also include more women than men, work part-time. More men who are high school dropout work than women who are high school dropout. White men have higher participation rate and hours of work than black men. Let's compare the labor force participation rate for whites, worker, and black worker. So we start recording labor force participation rate for black worker in 1972. So we can see that the labor force participation rate for black worker is always less than the one for white worker. So from 1972, both of them increases, so white labor participation for black worker and white worker increases all the way up to, so 67% for white worker and 64% for black worker in 2000. Okay, after 2000, both of them drop, so, and then even during the pandemic, 2019, 2020, both of them, decreases. The level of participation rate for white dropped to 62%, and for black dropped to 58%. Now let's talk about the average weekly hours of work of production worker from 1900 to 2013. So in 1900, the weekly average of work was about 55 hours, for U.S. worker, and this gradually decreases all the way up to, so 47 hours in, right, in 1930, in 1938, and with a bigger drop in 1939, to 35 to 24 hours, so at the beginning of World War II in 1939, and then, and this gradual decrease keep, going on until 2013 to 34 hours per week. This is the end of the video about measuring labor supply. Next time, we'll talk about the hours of work decision. Thank you.